Hi, and welcome to Global Studies with Miss Pritchard. This video is for Global 1 students, and we will look at the start of Islam and the rise of the Islamic empires. All right, we're going to start with the origins, and the origins of Islam are in Arabia. Arabia is the crossroads of 3 continents, and they survive by trade. And in the 600s, they were surrounded by multiple empires, so you had lots of trade going back and forth. Bedouins thrive in the harsh desert climate because they can escort the caravans for trade across the desert from one oasis to the next. Now, since this area is dependent on trade, it means there is a lot of cultural diffusion. And you need to know the key values for the Bedouins are courage, family loyalty, and warrior skills. They are also known as excellent storytellers and poets. Now, the center of trade and religion in the Arabian Peninsula was the city of Mecca, and the Kaaba had been associated with Abraham. Remember, he's the founder of Judaism. But it eventually becomes a shrine to over 300 different gods. Now remember, the Jews and the Christians are the only monotheistic religions, but the rest of the religions are all polytheistic, hence the 300 different gods. And keep in mind, Jews and Christians also live in Arabia, so they are going to strongly influence Muhammad. All right, you can see the map here. The Byzantine Empire is to the northwest. You have the Persian Empire to the northeast, and you have the Kingdom of Aksum to the southwest. And if you look at that purple arrow, there is your city of Mecca. All right, Muhammad. Muhammad was orphaned at an early age, so he was raised by his grandfather and his uncle, who were powerful leaders in the Bedouin culture. And he worked leading caravans through the desert. When he was 25, he began to work for an older, wealthy businesswoman named Khadija, and she eventually proposes to him, and they get married. Please note, she proposed to him. So right there, that tells you a lot about their relationship. It was not that he was in charge of everything. They were much more equal. In 610, Muhammad began receiving revelations from God through the angel Gabriel. Khadija is the one who convinced Muhammad that he had to share his message with others, and she is the reason he began preaching monotheism and equality. Because he was afraid to go out and tell people he was getting messages from God because, well, they would think he was crazy. All right, so the wealthy and powerful Meccans did not like Muhammad's message because it threatens their status, because if everybody's equal, they're not more powerful. And in 622, they plan to kill him. This leads to the Hijra, and this is when Muhammad flees to the city of Yathrib, which is north of Mecca. 622 marks the start of the Muslim calendar. And Yathrib is renamed Medina, and Muhammad and his followers unite with Arabs and Jews of the city and form a strong community. 8 years later, Muhammad returns to Mecca with an army of 10,000 followers. The city surrenders. Muhammad destroys the idols in the Kaaba and makes a call to prayer from its roof. And 2 years later, he dies, and by that time, much of Arabia had been united under Islam. All right, the 5 pillars of Islam. These are the 5 main beliefs. There is faith, which is submission to Allah as the one and only God, and Muhammad as the last and greatest prophet. Prayer 5 times a day facing Mecca. Charity. This is anonymously giving to the poor or the less fortunate. Fasting during the month of Ramadan, which is the 9th month of the calendar. And you need to know that they follow a lunar calendar, so that 9th month actually, well, it goes throughout the year. In the last few years, it's been at the end of the summer, beginning of autumn. And this is the time to honor and reflect on the revelations given to Muhammad. You also need to know that that fasting is from sunup to sundown. It is not a month of not eating. Pilgrimage. Once in a life, each Muslim must go to Mecca and participate in the Hajj if they are able. The huge part of that is if they can afford it. All right, the Quran is the sacred text of Islam, and it is the written account of the teachings of Muhammad. It is considered the last and most perfect message from Allah or God, and a continuation of the Torah and the New Testament. All right, here you can see pictures of the Kaaba in Mecca, and the color photos are from recent Hajj visits. And the one in the bottom left is an older drawing, but it is also taken at the time of the Hajj. So you can see there are thousands who attend, hundreds of thousands actually. All right. Sharia. This is another word that you probably hear a lot in the news because this is where a lot of the misconceptions about Islam and a lot of the reasons Western Christians don't like Islam come up. And Sharia is the code of law established by interpretations of the Quran and the examples set by Muhammad and the Sunnah. And it gives rules for everything from clothing to marriage, divorce, and interest rates on loans. Keep in mind, Islam provides a strong structure for daily life and behavior, as well as equality in society, because all believers are equal. And Jews and Christians are considered people of the book because they worship the same God. Now, where Westerners come up with problems with the Sharia law is because in a lot of the extreme Muslim fanatics and the Muslim societies, they use the Sharia law to enforce strict punishments and, well, frequently death sentences for things that would not cause problems in the West. All right, now let's get into the political history of Islam. After Muhammad dies, there are multiple successors. His first successor is Abu Bakr, and he is a close friend of Muhammad, and he is named the first caliph. And he begins to rebuild after some tribes try to rebel from Muhammad's death. And the first four caliphs are called the rightly guided caliphs. Now, what you need to know is that even though Abu Bakr is named the leader, there was a lot of debate whether it should be Abu Bakr or Ali. Now, Abu Bakr is Muhammad's father-in-law. Ali is Muhammad's son-in-law. And a lot of people felt that the leader should come from Muhammad's direct family. So that is a problem right from the beginning, and it's going to become a huge problem later on. In 656, the third caliph, Uthman, is murdered, and his successor is Ali, the one that is Muhammad's son-in-law. Unfortunately, he is murdered in 661, and this leads to a permanent split in the religion. You have the Shia, also known as Shiite Muslims, who followed Ali and believe the leader of Islam should be a relative of Muhammad, and they follow a stricter interpretation of Islam. And they make up about 16% of the Muslims worldwide. The Sunni believe the first four caliphs are rightly guided caliphs, and that the leader of Islam must follow the Sunnah or Muhammad's example, but that leader does not have to be a relative of Muhammad. They follow the Umayyads after the assassination of Ali in 661, and they make up about 83% of the Muslims worldwide. They are a majority of the Muslims. Then you have a very tiny little group that reject the wealth of the Umayyad and follow a spiritual interpretation of living a life of poverty, and they are more interested in the mysticism of Islam. And they are known as the Sufi, and they make up about 1% of Muslims worldwide. All right, Islamic empires. Al-Andalus is a Muslim kingdom in southern Spain, established by the Berbers and an Umayyad, and they control Spain until 1492. That's a very familiar date because that's when Isabella and Ferdinand kicked the Muslims out and take back Spain. 12. The Abbasids. They take power in 750 and slaughter all but one member of the Umayyad family, and they move the capital to Baghdad and control all of Arabia. The Fatimid, they are established by Shia Muslims who claim descent from Fatima, Muhammad's daughter, and they begin in North Africa and are now centered in Iran. All right. 14 is cities. The Islamic Empire has several cities that became centers of learning: Damascus, Baghdad, Cordoba, Cairo, and they are all examples of urban planning and Muslim architecture. The House of Wisdom is built in Baghdad. And the translated texts from other cultures, therefore saving learning from previous civilizations. So that shows that the scholarship of the Muslims was not intimidated by the past. They, in fact, want to take what has been learned before and advance it even farther. Arts and architecture. Images of living creatures are prohibited in Islam, so calligraphy is the main art form. Muslim architecture is known for its use of domes and arches, as well as open, airy spaces, which makes complete sense when you're living in a desert because you want it cooled, but you also do not want anything that the sand can damage and will hold heat. All right. And you can also see the cultural diffusion because they blend a lot of Roman and Byzantine elements into their architecture. And one of the most famous sets of stories is the 1001 Arabian Nights, and that even includes the story of Aladdin. All right, medicine. Al-Razi wrote a medical encyclopedia which is translated and used throughout the world. Believed patients could heal quicker with fresh air. Math. Al-Khwarizmi invented algebra. And we also have Ibn al-Haytham, who wrote about optics and helped invent telescopes and microscopes with his ideas. Scholars rely on observation and experiments, unlike the Greeks who rely on logic. And keep in mind, the Islamic empires early on are also known for their tolerance. They were culturally diverse and respect the learning and allowed non-Muslims to prosper, as well as Maimonides, who are the famous Jewish philosopher who lived in Cordoba under Muslim rule. So it's really only in recent times that you see this intolerance and fanaticism of the Muslim world rising up the way we see it today. All right, so this is your chance to get your notes written down. Make sure you show them to me for credit before the end of the week when your projects are due.